Most people believe that dramatic change requires dramatic effort. They think success, happiness, discipline, or confidence comes from huge decisions, moiety, massive motivation, or life-altering moments. But what if the opposite were true? What if the biggest transformation in your life didn't come from something big at all, but from something so small you would normally ignore it? In Japan, many people live by a quiet philosophy that most of the world completely overlooks. Instead of chasing massive breakthroughs, they focus on tiny habits so small they seem almost insignificant. Yet over time, these tiny behaviors reshape identity, discipline, emotional stability, and even how people perceive themselves. And here's the strange part. Most people who struggle with productivity, confidence, or personal growth are not failing because they lack intelligence, talent, or opportunity. They're failing because they misunderstand how change actually works. They try to overhaul their entire life overnight. They set huge goals. They demand perfect discipline. And when motivation disappears, which it always does, everything collapses. But Japanese culture quietly mastered something far more powerful. They learned how to use small psychological shifts to create massive life transformation. Habits that take seconds, sometimes minutes, yet slowly rewire how your brain thinks, reacts, and behaves. And the most fascinating part, many of these habits are so simple, you could start them today. In this video, we're going to explore 5 tiny Japanese habits that may completely transform the way you approach life. Discipline, relationships, and personal growth. Some of them will feel surprisingly simple. Some might challenge the way you think. And one of them, the final habit, might completely change how you see progress itself. But before we reach that one, there's a tiny mental shift that Japanese culture teaches from childhood. And once you understand it, you'll start noticing a mistake most people make every single day. Habit number 1, the power of micro beginnings. You might not realize this, but one of the biggest reasons people fail to change their lives has nothing to do with laziness. It has everything to do with how the brain reacts to starting. Think about the last time you told yourself you were going to start something new. Maybe you planned to exercise, learn a skill, wake up earlier, or finally focus on an important project. At first, motivation felt strong, but when the moment came to actually begin, something inside you resisted. You procrastinated, you waited, you told yourself you'd start tomorrow. Most people assume this resistance means they lack discipline, but Japanese productivity philosophy approaches this problem differently. Instead of forcing massive action, they focus on micro beginnings. The idea is simple. Never ask your brain to do something big. Ask it to do something so small it feels almost effortless. Instead of committing to a 1-hour workout, you commit to 1 push-up. Instead of studying for 2 hours, you open the book and read 1 page. Instead of cleaning your entire room, you organize 1 item. At first this sounds pointless, but psychologically something powerful happens. Your brain stops resisting. Why? Because resistance is usually triggered by perceived effort. The moment a task feels big, the brain interprets it as a threat to comfort. But when the task feels tiny, the brain doesn't activate that resistance. This is why Japanese learning culture often emphasizes starting small. Students are taught that progress begins not with intensity, but with initiation. Because once you begin something small, momentum quietly builds. 1 page becomes 5, 1 push-up becomes 10, 1 minute becomes 20. But even if it doesn't grow larger, the most important transformation has already begun. You've trained your identity. You've shown your brain that you are someone who starts. An identity change is far more powerful than motivation. Think about it. Most people wait until they feel motivated to begin something. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Japanese habit philosophy flips the equation. They focus on behavior first, emotion later. You act first. Motivation follows. You might notice something interesting if you experiment with this idea. Try asking yourself 1 question when facing resistance. What is the smallest possible version of this task? Not the productive version, not the impressive version. The smallest version. When you reduce the psychological weight of starting, you unlock a strange mental freedom. Suddenly, progress feels lighter. And over weeks or months, something surprising happens. Tiny beginnings slowly accumulate into massive results, not through pressure, but through consistency. And once you begin seeing life through this lens, another powerful Japanese habit starts to make sense. Because starting small is only the first step. The next habit explains how to fall in love with progress itself, even when progress feels invisible. And most people completely misunderstand this. Habit number 2, Kaizen thinking. Most people make a critical mistake when trying to improve their life. They chase big results, bigger success, faster progress. But Japanese philosophy introduces a concept that quietly challenges this entire mindset. It's called Kaizen, and its meaning is deceptively simple: continuous improvement. But here's the psychological twist. Kaizen does not focus on dramatic leaps. It focuses on tiny daily improvements that compound over time. You might not realize this, but the brain actually struggles to stay motivated when results feel far away. Imagine trying to lose 20 pounds, to learn a language, build a successful career, or master a difficult skill. The goal feels exciting at first, but when progress seems slow, motivation collapses. Your brain starts asking uncomfortable questions. Is this even working? Why am I not seeing results? Maybe this isn't worth it. And this is where most people quit. But Kaizen thinking removes this psychological trap. Instead of chasing big results, it focuses on tiny measurable improvement every day. 1% better. That's it. Not perfect, not dramatic, just slightly better than yesterday. Imagine improving one small behavior daily. Reading one extra page, saving one extra dollar, practicing one extra minute. Over time, these improvements compound in ways that are almost invisible at first, but months later, the difference becomes enormous. There's also another fascinating psychological effect. When you focus on small improvements, you create a reward loop in the brain. Each small step becomes a victory. Each tiny gain builds confidence. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by a distant goal, you feel encouraged by daily progress. And confidence is one of the most underrated forces in personal growth. Because confidence doesn't come from motivation. It comes from evidence. Evidence that you are moving forward. Evidence that your actions matter. Evidence that progress is happening, even if it's small. In Japan, Kaizen thinking became famous in manufacturing and business, but its deeper power lies in everyday life. People quietly apply it to learning, discipline, relationships, and self-development. Instead of asking, how do I change my life? They ask a much more powerful question. How can I improve today by just a little? That single shift removes pressure. It removes perfectionism, and it replaces it with patience. But here's the part most people overlook. Kaizen works best when combined with something else, something deeply rooted in Japanese culture, a habit that shapes not only productivity, but emotional resilience, because improving every day sounds good in theory. But what happens when life becomes messy, when progress stalls, when things go wrong? This is where the next habit becomes incredibly powerful, and it begins with learning how to accept imperfection itself. Habit number 3, wabi-sabi mindset. You might not realize this, but one of the biggest sources of anxiety in modern life is the pressure to be perfect. For perfect productivity, perfect appearance, perfect success, perfect life. Social media quietly amplifies this pressure every day. You see people achieving more, traveling more, earning more, improving faster. And suddenly, your own progress feels small, incomplete, behind. But Japanese philosophy offers a perspective that completely transforms how we view imperfection. It's called wabi-sabi. At its core, wabi-sabi is the appreciation of imperfection, impermanence, and simplicity. Instead of chasing flawless outcomes, it teaches you to see beauty in things that are incomplete, evolving, or slightly imperfect. This idea appears everywhere in Japanese culture. A cracked ceramic bowl repaired with gold, weathered wood in traditional architecture, simple minimalist spaces that feel calm rather than luxurious. The message behind all of this is subtle but powerful. Imperfection is not failure. Imperfection is part of life's texture. Psychologically, this mindset can dramatically reduce the mental pressure people place on themselves. Think about how often perfectionism stops progress. You delay starting something because you want the perfect plan. You hesitate to share ideas because they might not be perfect. You abandon projects because results aren't as good as you imagined. Perfectionism creates paralysis, but the wabi-sabi mindset removes this trap. It encourages you to embrace the imperfect process, to see growth as something messy and evolving. Instead of asking, is this perfect? You ask, is this honest progress? This shift creates psychological freedom. You stop fearing mistakes. You stop obsessing over flawless results, and you begin focusing on the experience of growth itself. There's another powerful effect too. When you stop chasing perfection, creativity expands. Ideas flow more freely. Learning becomes less stressful. You become more willing to experiment. And experimentation is the foundation of mastery. Most experts didn't become great by avoiding mistakes. They became great by making thousands of imperfect attempts. But something even more interesting happens when you adopt this mindset. You become calmer, less reactive, less emotionally shaken by small failures, because you understand something deeper. Life is not a straight path toward perfection. It's an evolving journey of improvement, but accepting imperfection doesn't mean becoming passive. Japanese culture balances wabi-sabi with another tiny habit that quietly strengthens discipline, a habit that shapes the environment around you. And when you understand it, you'll realize why Japanese spaces often feel calm, organized, and mentally refreshing. Because this next habit is not just about cleaning, it's about clearing mental clutter. Habit number 4. Reset your space daily. Most people underestimate how strongly their environment affects their psychology. You might think your mood, productivity, and focus come purely from internal motivation, but your surroundings constantly influence how your brain feels and behaves. Clutter creates mental noise. Disorder increases stress. Messy spaces quietly drain attention. Japanese culture deeply understands this connection between physical order and mental clarity. One simple habit reflects this philosophy perfectly. Every day, no matter how busy life becomes, people take a moment to reset their environment. Not a deep cleaning, not hours of organizing, just small daily resets, putting objects back where they belong, wiping surfaces, straightening items, creating visual calm. This habit might seem trivial, but its psychological effects are surprisingly powerful. When your environment feels organized, your brain interprets the space as safe and stable. Decision fatigue decreases, stress levels drop, focus improves. You might have experienced this yourself without realizing it. Think about how different it feels to sit in a tidy workspace compared to a cluttered one. In the clean environment, your thoughts feel lighter, tasks feel manageable, but in a chaotic space, the mind becomes scattered. You feel distracted even when trying to focus. Japanese daily routines often incorporate short moments dedicated to resetting space. In schools, students clean classrooms together. In homes, small cleaning rituals happen naturally throughout the day. But the deeper purpose is not cleanliness, it's mindfulness. The act of restoring order creates a sense of control. It reminds you that even small actions can influence how your day feels. There's also a symbolic element. Resetting your environment becomes a way of resetting your mind. Yesterday's stress doesn't need to remain. Yesterday's mess doesn't need to carry into today. Every reset becomes a quiet psychological restart. Over time, this habit creates something powerful. You stop feeling overwhelmed by your surroundings. Instead, you feel capable of shaping them. And that subtle feeling of control strengthens confidence. But the Japanese mindset doesn't stop with environment. There's another habit that goes even deeper, one that transforms how you interact with time itself. Because most people feel constantly rushed, always chasing the next task, always feeling behind. But this next habit teaches something radically different. It teaches you how to slow down your perception of time, and the psychological effect is profound. Habit number 5, the one-moment focus. Most people believe productivity means doing more things faster, multitasking, switching between tasks, constant stimulation. But you might not realize this. Multitasking is one of the fastest ways to exhaust your brain. Each time you switch focus, your brain burns cognitive energy. Attention fragments. Mental fatigue increases. Japanese culture often approaches attention very differently. Instead of trying to handle many things at once, there is a quiet habit of fully focusing on one moment at a time. Whether it's drinking tea, preparing food, working on a task, or even walking, the practice is simple but powerful. Give complete attention to what you're doing. No rushing, no divided focus, just full presence. Psychologically, this creates several surprising benefits. First, mental noise decreases. Your brain stops jumping between unfinished thoughts. Second, the quality of your actions improves. Tasks are completed more carefully and efficiently. And third, perhaps most importantly, your sense of time changes. When attention is scattered, time feels rushed and chaotic. But when attention is focused, time feels slower and more spacious. You stop feeling constantly behind. Instead, you feel grounded in what you're doing. This is why traditional Japanese rituals often emphasize patience and presence. The goal is not just completing an action, it's experiencing the moment fully. You can apply this habit to everyday life easily. When eating, focus only on eating. When working, focus on a single task. When talking to someone, give them full attention. At first it might feel strange, because modern life trains us to constantly divide attention. Phones buzz, notifications interrupt, new information constantly competes for focus. But when you practice one moment focus, something interesting happens. Your mind becomes calmer, decisions feel clearer. Even simple activities become more satisfying. But there's another deeper psychological effect. You begin noticing life more. Small details, subtle emotions, quiet moments of meaning. And this awareness creates something many people struggle to find: contentment. But presence alone is not enough to sustain long-term transformation. There's one final Japanese habit that quietly ties all the others together. A habit that changes how you view progress, mistakes, and even your identity. And once you understand it, personal growth begins to feel far less overwhelming. When people imagine life transformation, they often picture dramatic change, huge decisions, major breakthroughs, moments that suddenly reshape everything. But Japanese philosophy quietly reveals a different truth. Transformation rarely happens in giant leaps. It happens in small, consistent shifts repeated over time, tiny beginnings, daily improvement, accepting imperfection, resetting your environment, focusing fully on the present moment. Each habit may seem simple on its own, almost too small to matter, but when practiced together, they slowly reshape how you think, how you behave, and how you experience life. And perhaps the most powerful lesson hidden in these habits is this: you don't need to become a completely different person overnight. You only need to become slightly better today than you were yesterday, because the future version of you is not built through motivation. It's built through repeated small actions. So here's a simple question to leave you with. Which one of these tiny habits could you start today? Not tomorrow, not next week, today, because the smallest step often becomes the beginning of the biggest transformation. And in the next video, we'll explore another fascinating concept from Japanese philosophy, a mindset that can help you discover meaning, direction, and purpose in your everyday life. Until then, remember, small habits, quiet progress, extraordinary change.